Top of the morning, everyone. This is former Pennsylvania State Constable Stephen Wiggs of the 16th Ward, Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I am coming to you guys with some thought-provoking content. Thought-provoking content. I've had many conversations with random people about the elected position of the constabulary in Pennsylvania. And in those conversations, I've found that many Pennsylvanians have the slightest idea what the role of the constable actually is. Everyone has this idea that we are process servers of the judicial system. And widely respected thought, because that's what most of our agencies within the constabulary promote, because that's all they decide to promote for the most part. But there is select few officers in the constabulary of Pennsylvania that actually get involved with many different law enforcement functions. Process service is not a law enforcement function. You know, you're delivering papers for someone to go to court and answer to whatever it is that the judicial system is dishing out from whomever the complainant is. Now, while it is a working system, that is not the first function of the constable's office in Pennsylvania. And a lot of the people in Pennsylvania do not know that it is not the primary or first function of the office. So, in these conversations, not only do I find that there is an undeniable amount of citizens in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that don't know what they're electing a constable to actually do, but other agencies clearly are absent-minded purposefully by their agencies and by our own agency of what the constable's office is supposed to be about. So I find it very intriguing to see that there are people challenging the agency while guys are in the field. I have definitely experienced these things 100% throughout my 7-year run on the job, and I have vowed to make things right. We can no longer leave people blind. I mean, it's undeniably dangerous to leave people blind to what the agency is about. Just imagine, okay, let's talk about just a second here. What could actually take place should individuals out there in the field not know? And I mean, it's not what could take place, it's what currently takes place on a consistent basis because of the lack of information. You know, if we got our officers, elected or deputies, out there serving warrants, and the citizens of the Commonwealth do not know that they are also classified as police officers along with the rest of the peace officers out there, then there's going to be some pushback. And it has been. What makes matters even worse is that you have law enforcement agencies outside of the constabulary that are voluntarily utilizing their positions of influence on the citizens to misrepresent the stance of the constabulary itself by saying constables in Pennsylvania are not law enforcement, are not police officers, and have no authority at all. It just doesn't make any sense for this to happen unless there is somebody out there willingly trying to get guys hurt in this agency. And that is what I've ran into countlessly in many locations of the state, where you have some state police barracks and you have some municipal police departments that are willing to lie to the people about what the constable office actually is. But then you have constables out there that don't want to be represented as law enforcement because they don't want the responsibility of the office in its totality. So imagine, and this is what I brought up to some people recently about the agency. You Pennsylvanians, and I'm going to talk slightly to the Pennsylvanians also. People are witnessing constables during the times of election run a campaign, knocking on their doors, handing out postcards, things of that nature. Running a campaign, no different than any other elected position in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And the constable or the person running for the office may be promoting some of the functions of the constable's office that may be appealing. Like, the constable is the conservation of the peace, and it's a federal law or federal case law that identifies that element of the office. Constables are peace officers and law enforcement officers sworn to protect the citizens. So they'll sell those talking points in order to get elected. They may touch on slightly elements of the judicial system, but yet they don't want the citizens to really focus on that because it's not appealing to say the constable also does evictions in terms of kicking people out of their houses. That's not an appealing thing. Anything that the constable enforces for the judicial system is not always good news. I mean, it's bad news a lot of the time. But the elected sheriff isn't the one that is really out there serving in the field with their deputies. It's the deputies. The sheriff gets to play politics and sitting in the castle's seat as the king. The constable is the king of the agency that steps out into the field with or without their deputies. So the constable is also on the front line. The sheriff gets to send their foot soldiers. The constable is also on the front line. Now, when the constable is elected, the constable has the ability to disappear and leave the minds and eyesight of the citizens, and leave the municipal police departments to do what the constable promoted that their office does. And the citizens, because they're not used to holding a constable accountable for the totality of the agency's authority and position under statute, the municipal police departments are able to be used by the constables to take the mind of the citizens away from what the constable have promoted. Now understand, the constable is elected to a 6-year term, 2 years more than the sheriff, 2 years more than the President of the United States. Okay? Like, you have to ask yourself, what are you electing the constable to 6 years to actually do in the community? You see, if the constable's job was to solely serve the judicial system, that sounds like a position that really don't need someone to be elected to it. That sounds like a deputy's position. So what are you actually electing the constable to do? Because to be in an elected seat is to be in a leadership seat. Someone is voting for you. People are voting for you. So you are in a seat of leadership. But what are you a leader of? You are elected to run an agency that the citizens put you in. But you have to understand what you're being elected to do, or what the constable is being elected to do. The constable is being elected to be the law enforcement peace officer of the community. So the constable is in fact one of those peace officers in the field to protect the citizens. That's your primary responsibility, the protection of the citizens. Now, citizens don't really pay much attention to that protection part, because the masses of the office is only promoting the judicial system during the 6-year term. During the 6-year term. So during the election process, they want to be politicians and talk about all the appealing stuff that the office may get involved with, but they themselves will not actually touch that element, the protection of the citizens. They will only during their 6-year term touch the elements of the judicial system. Why? because that element is where the state holds our fee bill, our fee structure. But here's the thing. There are elements within the fee bill that also identifies us being paid to make arrests in the field that do not have a warrant attached to it. So we're talking about warrantless arrests. But a lot of these constables don't like to promote that part, because to promote that part identifies you 100% as a police officer. Police officer. And the constables in Pennsylvania on the mass level do not want to be promoted as a police officer. Well, here's the problem with these people. By stating that you're not a police officer, by a constable stating that they're not police officers while being constables, is actually breaking the law. Because the law in Pennsylvania says you are a police officer as you are a Pennsylvania State Constable or Deputy Constable. That's what the law says. The law doesn't say you're a police officer as a constable only if you go through the Municipal Police Academy for municipal police officers. Constables are not municipal police officers. We're not hired employees. The constable is the government. The constable, the elected constable, is of a government function, a government nature. You're not an employee as a constable. You are the elected official. Employees sign off and on duty. Elected officials do not. A judge will not stop being a judge because he's not in the judge's seat wearing a black robe. The judge will always be the judge. They may not be judging when they leave the courtroom, but you will always be classified as the judge. A lawyer may not be an elected official unless they are the district attorney. But understand, the district attorney as the elected official is always going to be the district attorney, whether he or she is in the courtroom or not. The constable is always on duty. Always on duty. There is no off switch for the constable. Understand that. Never. It doesn't matter if we're being paid for a function or not. It doesn't matter if the constable is paid for a function or not. The constable under statute always has an obligation to protect the citizens. Always. Always. It doesn't turn off. So the citizens of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania need to understand the function of the constabulary. The primary role of the constable office is the protection of the citizens. No different than any municipal police officer. Well, actually, the constable actually has a lot more stake inside the protection of its citizens because they're elected by the citizens to actually protect the citizens. The Constables of Pennsylvania are not elected to serve the judicial system. The Constables of Pennsylvania are elected to protect the citizens. And the people need to understand that. There are laws in place identifying such. There are laws openly in place identifying such. Let's tap into one of the case laws, Act 147. A lot of people in Pennsylvania and certain law enforcement agencies and certain positions of government love to misinterpret Act 147 to try and undermine what the Supreme Court is actually saying. What is Act 147? Act 147 is a position that the judicial branch is trying to take upon the constable office to establish supervisory authority over the office. Now, understand here, I'm educating you people right now. I need you guys to really understand this, and I want those out there voluntarily misinterpreting what this case law is actually saying to pay close attention to what I'm about to say. Act 147, the Supreme Court case law, Act 147 of 1990-1991, is identifying the Pennsylvania State Constable as a police officer for the purpose of protecting the people. For the purpose of protecting the people. How? In what way are they being identified in the protection of the people? The Supreme Court identified that the constable is a peace officer charged, listen to the word, charged with the conservation of the peace. Charged, okay? I don't know how clear I need to make that. Charged. So I know that there is federal case law that says a police officer doesn't have the legal obligation to protect the communities or protect the citizens or protect the people. A lot of people are upset with that idea. But here's the difference with the constable office. Although there's federal law, case law, that says a police officer does not have to protect the citizens, does not have a legal obligation to protect the citizens. There is, in Pennsylvania, Supreme Court case law identifying the constable as being charged with the conservation of the peace, and states that it's the constable's business to arrest those who violate the peace. Pay attention to what I just said. Supreme Court case law, Act 147 of 1990-1991. This is not ancient history. Charges the constable with the conservation of the peace and states that it's the constable's business to arrest those who violate the peace. The Supreme Court gives a footnote, and the footnote says a constable is a police officer for that purpose. For that purpose, the constable is a police officer. For what purpose? For the purpose of being the conservation of the peace and arresting those, having the business to arrest those who violate the peace. For this purpose, they're telling you the constable is a police officer. Too many people out there voluntarily misunderstand this case law purposefully. With a capital P, purposefully. Purposefully. To try and undermine the office of constable. Okay? So you don't get to ignore. Now, understand, in the same case law, they use the term independent contractor toward the constable office. What is the constable an independent contractor within, under the law? The constable is an independent contractor serving the judicial system. Why? Because the constable is not an employee of the judicial system. The constable is not an employee of the judicial system. The constable is of the executive branch, the state government. The state government. Hence the reason the title becomes state constable. Because the constable is of the state government, not the judicial government. That's what Act 147 is all about. Act 147 of 1991 is the judicial system trying to establish supervisory authority over the constable. And the Supreme Court in Act 147 says, no, you cannot have supervisory authority over the constable because the constable is an elected official. Therefore, Act 147 becomes unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional for the judicial system to be able to supervise an elected official. So, with that being said, guess who else is also not an employee of the judicial system in such a way, but yet under the executive branch? The county sheriff. Yes, the county sheriff. The county sheriff in Pennsylvania is of the executive branch, but yet they're paid county dollars, county tax dollars. So they're held to the county in a sense, but yet they are still of the executive branch. Guess who else is under the executive branch? The district attorneys. The district attorneys. Yes. The elected sheriff and the elected district attorneys of the counties are of the executive branch. So understand, both entities are also not employees of the court system. Okay? But they just want to single out the constables. But see, understand, Act 147 only singles out the constable because the court system is trying to establish supervisory authority over the constable. A lot of people like to say, well, the constable doesn't have any supervision. Well, neither does the county sheriff, and neither does the district attorney. Who supervises the district attorney? Who supervises the county sheriff? A lot of people would say, well, the citizens that elected them. Well, why can't you say the same for the constable's office? Why can't you say the same? You see the double standard going on here? Many district attorneys out there are throwing around ideas. Other elected officials out there are throwing around ideas that the constable doesn't have any supervision. Oh, yes, we do. The same laws that protect citizens from other law enforcement agencies, it's the same laws that protect the citizens from the constable's office. The constables have to abide by the same laws. You know, we're held to the same standard as other law enforcement. We got to uphold people's constitutional rights just like every other law enforcement agency. As a matter of fact, the constable is more inclined to uphold the citizens' constitutional rights because the constable position is derived from the Constitution directly. Just like the sheriff's position. But the constable is the first that is derived from the Constitution. Man, you see how much many people don't know? The people are electing constables and don't know anything about the agency and what the agency is supposed to be doing. There are local municipalities out there that have constables, or the position of constable seek to be fulfilled, and the municipalities are lacking police coverage because they can't afford a municipal police department. So they're relying on the Pennsylvania State Police. But get this, the Pennsylvania State Police do not answer to ordinance violations, but the constables have the authority to do so. The constables locally have the authority to answer to ordinance violations, where the state police have a policy that hinders them from doing so. Okay? I mean, I just want the citizens to really wake up to who they're electing and what they're supposed to be doing. You know, you may have constables out there on light duty, only serving the polling places. If a constable is of a certain age and they're not physically capable of performing all of the functions, you know, it is of the benefit to the constable to seek deputies to fulfill certain roles. You know, it's not always the easiest thing in the world, because just like the sheriff, just like the chief of police, the deputy serves at the pleasure of the constable with the authority of the constable. So therefore, anything that the deputy gets involved with, if it's of illegal an illegal matter, or they're out there doing something reckless with the authority of the constable is held liable for their deputy, just like the deputy sheriffs and just like the police officers of municipal police departments and troopers of the Pennsylvania State Police. The deputy constables are the business of the elected constable. What's the role of the constable? The same thing that you see municipal police departments functioning in, protecting the community, or maybe presence or patrolling and things of that nature, man. Like, that is the role of the constable. Municipal police officers don't have the powers on their own. Their powers to protect citizens are derived from the position of constable. Yes, it is. In Pennsylvania, there's laws all about it. And I'm going to go into another recording talking about it. I'm going to provide some context to that statement. Municipal police departments, state troopers in Pennsylvania also derived their position of authority from the Constabulary of Pennsylvania. That is a powerful statement to make without any real context. But I'll tell you guys this. On my civilian page on Facebook, I have provided more than enough evidence identifying this statement to be factual, because it is the General Assembly, it is lawmakers of Pennsylvania that actually has those laws in place currently today. This is not a thing of the past. This is a thing of the present. And many municipal police officers out there don't know that they are actually what we call ex officio constables. Constables, man. Municipal police officers do not come before constables. Pennsylvania state troopers do not come before constables. Okay? The title constable, the word police, before it meant a specific person in the law enforcement community, it meant the actions of a peace officer, which was constables, marshals, sheriffs, and marshals. The original peace officers. The original peace officers of the U.S. Okay? The original peace officers of the U.S. Okay? The word police means a general law enforcement. It's a general law enforcement term. It means one that exhibits authority. Policing. Okay? It meant the actions of peace officers. Everybody likes to get tied up on the word police so much. The words police or the term police officer. Man, but a lot of people in the communities of Pennsylvania don't know that the constables are also police officers. A lot of municipal police officers like to think that in order to become police officers, you have to go through the municipal police training system, MOPEC, which is basically spearheaded by the Pennsylvania State Police. Well, we got troopers out there stating that only a person becomes a police officer if they go through Act 120, which is the municipal police officer training system. But yet the Pennsylvania State Police don't have Act 120. The Pennsylvania State Police don't have an act. They just have the Pennsylvania State Police Academy. But if they continuously say that only a person is a police officer if they go through Act 120, then they voluntarily just destroy themselves. and the idea of being police officers. They shoot themselves in the foot all the time. Tell you a quick story. My president of my local association talked to a corporal with Troop K of Philadelphia County. And the corporal and my president had a conversation over the phone. The corporal did not know that my president was a former acting chief of police. He did not know. And the corporal stated to my president, your definition of a police officer and my definition of a police officer are two different things. And my president said, well, what's your definition of a police officer? And the corporal said, someone with Act 120, which is the Municipal Police Officer Training System. MOPEC is what they call it. And my president said, well, I'm Act 120. Are you? He said that specifically because he knows that the Pennsylvania State Police don't have Act 120. They may train guys in Act 120, but they themselves don't have it. The Pennsylvania State Police currently don't have an act. The only ones that have an act is the municipal police officers, the sheriffs, and the constables. But the Pennsylvania State Police don't have an act. It's amazing. So you want to know what that corporal did when he said that? He hung up the phone. The corporal hung up the phone because he did not expect that kind of response. Because he didn't know how to handle it. You see? So what I want you guys to understand is that we have constables being elected to these positions, people electing constables and don't know what their roles are supposed to be in society. And this has to change 100%. Constables are getting away with not doing anything for their communities because the citizens don't know what they're supposed to be doing. I'm just trying to make light of it because their citizens are losing out. And, let me say something to you municipal police officers out there. Get a clue. Get a clue. Get a clue. I need you guys to get a clue. I need you guys to wake up. You guys are not the end-all be-all. Your training is not the end-all be-all because there's just entirely too many of you guys out there. And I said this before and I'll say it again. You guys are making too many mistakes out there in the field for you to have such training and talking crap about the constable's office. A lot of you guys don't even know that you go through 600 hours of training or however many hours it is, only to actually be ex officio constables. A lot of you guys don't know how to take that information that I just said. And you guys will sit there and have have some issues with that, but it's a reality. And there's state law that actually backs the claim. So, I gotta go. I greatly appreciate you guys' time. This is former Pennsylvania State Constable Stephen Wiggs of the 16th Ward, Allentown, Pennsylvania, coming to you guys hardcore with raw information, man. And I'm going to be coming harder. So, I'll talk to you guys later. Stay tuned. Peace.